Big Bang Theory sounds plausible, but when you actually carefully examine it scientifically, it's trying to argue that that everything came out of a mindless explosion of matter as well as space and time. You have to realize that the Big Bang Theory is saying that space and time all came out of a Big Bang. And so they're trying to make out that, it's very difficult for us to understand this, that there is a four-dimensional explosion, and that the three-dimensional world in which we live is really on the surface of a four-dimensional hypersphere. To most of us, that is just gobbledygook. We can't really make head nor tail of it. But actually, they're not without some grounds for what they're saying. And so we need to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Interestingly, they do acknowledge that space and time had a beginning. And that, for the we should recognize, by the way, that when it first came into on the horizon of scientific theories, the Big Bang Theory was rejected by many secular scientists for that very reason, because it suggested that there was a beginning. Oh, no, we can't go to the biblical view that says in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. However, having said that, I don't actually agree with the Big Bang for the following reasons. Although they are correct that there is a beginning of space and time, and on that bit they are right, they are then trying to suggest that a random four-dimensional explosion produces everything. Actually, I say, no. What actually is observed is that there is what we call a cosmological redshift, which is that space is itself expanding. Now, that's interesting because the Bible does refer to space, not only in Genesis 1, but in Isaiah 42, Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 22, Isaiah 42 verse 5, in Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 12, in Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 15, in Isaiah 44 verse 24, even Isaiah 45 verse 12, Zechariah 12 verse 1, and Job 9 verse 8. If you look up all those references, it actually refers to the Lord stretching the heavens. How wonderful that there in the ancient part of the Bible, which is not millions of years old, it's actually a few thousand years old, particularly the book of Job, probably the oldest book in the Bible, it actually refers to God stretching the heavens. Now, I find that stunning because, number one, it shows to me that the heavens are indeed a sort of fabric. In Psalm 102, it refers to the Lord folding up the universe like a garment. This is quoted at the end of Hebrews chapter 1. So from God's point of view, it would suggest that he sees the stars as placed on a fabric. So it's not that the Big Bang theorists were totally without foundation, as I said earlier. From a thermodynamic point of view, there is real evidence of expansion, right? And I'm not denying that. But it's where that expansion came from, which is the issue. What is more, there is real evidence that space itself is an entity. It's not empty. That space is affected by gravity, Einstein showed, right? Now here comes the interesting point. We can't prove this because nobody could go back to the beginning and rewind history. But an alternative approach to the very same equations of which the Big Bang is based on, that is, we call those metrics in astronomy. Metrics are sets of solutions or possible solutions to the general relativity equations. General relativity is a difficult subject. It's to do with space, time, and mass, right? Now, the Big Bang theorists dismiss immediately any notion that there could be another alternative explanation to the phenomena that we observe, right? They're not allowed any airtime. Even people who are not Christians, not believing in creation, are not given much room for discussion. A person who's now died, but Halton Arp, very, very clever astronomer, didn't agree with our position. In fact, would have no good word to say about a person who believed in creation, but nevertheless strongly disagreed with the traditional Big Bang theory of the universe. He was barely allowed any platform time at conferences, right? And yet he was the one who says that there is ample evidence that there is something wrong with the Big Bang view. And he spoke about quasars and formation of galaxies from a very different point of view. Now, where I want to just show you that there is something that is in his observations which points to what the Bible has been saying for millennia is this. Halton Arp showed that cosmological redshift, the expansion of the universe, is actually different to the redshift of objects which were supposedly meant to be extremely far away, but actually weren't as far away as people made out. He was actually showing also that the redshift that was observed was of galaxies which appear to be in massive shells, right? So it's as though you've got a series of concentric shells with the Milky Way not far off from the center of the universe. Now, as soon as you talk about a center of a universe to a Big Bang theorist, you've touched a sacred cow, because he says there is no center to the universe. I am not talking about geocentrism. That's not what I'm referring to, in case your viewers think that I'm talking about that. I'm not. We're talking about things on a galactic scale, right? And the Milky Way is itself of the order of 100,000 light years across, okay? But that is tiny compared with what we're referring to here, which is galaxies millions, if not billions, of light years away. Now, what Halton Arp is saying, and many others who are Christians have also suggested that there is something very, very interesting in the observations here, is that the galaxies appear to be in shells and that they are all moving away from us. 99% of them are moving away from us. Not all of them. There are some which are moving slightly towards us, right? Andromeda, which is a fairly close galaxy, it's actually one which is moving slightly towards us. But most of the galaxies are moving away in concentric shells. Now here comes the real amazing point. People who are writing from a biblical perspective have suggested that actually God made the universe with a natural center close to the Milky Way. He set the galaxies and the stars on the fourth day, just as it says on day 4, that he set the stars in the firmament, which is the space, right, in between the world and the edge of the universe, and that he probably made these stars out of the water above. We can't prove that, but that's what's suggested. Russ Humphreys, who's a famous scientist from the creation perspective, John Hartnett and others have worked on this view, particularly Russ Humphreys. Then they've said, well, if the center of mass was close to where the Milky Way is, then the universe out there has much less mass, and the universe is pushing out because of this fabric that I talked about, where the stars are placed in the galaxies, as this firmament, this space expands, all the galaxies get pushed out as well. And we're still seeing that pushing out today. And that God, in an ordered way, expanded the universe. Now, that thermodynamically is plausible. I can't prove it totally, but it would also explain one of the other major issues, which is how come we can still see the stars when they're supposedly billions of light years away? Well, it would mean that there is such a thing as time dilation. Processes go at different time rates. And it would mean then that light from stars would be travelling from our point of view in much faster from our perspective than those who, not that you can have it, but supposedly if somebody was out there at the universe, the starlight would actually be travelling at a much slower rate than we would observe it from our perspective. These are difficult concepts, but may I say that the Big Bang Theory has a major problem with it in another area, and that is to do with its own light travel problem. If you believe in the Big Bang, there is a thermodynamic problem because the universe, from their point of view, is meant to be 22 billion years old, right? And yet there are points in the universe which are further away than 22 billion light years away from each other. And yet everything indicates that there is a conformity of temperature as you move outwards, right? So how come this point in the universe has interacted with this point of the universe when it's over 22 billion light years away from each other? They haven't got enough time in their model for these two parts of the universe to interact with each other. In other words, they have a light travel problem. So when people argue against the creation model of the universe, they say, oh, there's a light travel problem. How come we can see stars more than 6,000 light years away? Actually, they don't realize it, but the Big Bang Theory also has its own light travel problem.